If everyone, let me welcome you to Meso Weekend Moves. Today, I want us to look at economics paper one, grade 11, that is term 4, whereby we're going to do a revision for us to prepare for term 4 examination. So now we are going to mainly look at an essay, which is section C. Section C, whereby we are going to answer two questions that are given, question 5 and question 6. But remember, we have to choose one question. So for us to prepare us fully, we are going to do both of those questions. So this question paper was written in Eastern Cape Province. So it was written in November 2024. So grade 11, let us be together into this revision, whereby we're going to mainly look at an essay of economics, paper 1. Let us be together from the start of this presentation to the end of it. So without wasting much time, let us go straight to our section C. So here we are on our section C. Here we are on our section C. Like we have said, this is an essay question that we are going to revise. So there is instruction that is given there which says answer any one of the two questions from this section in the answer book. Like I've said, we are going to attend both of the questions as you are going to attend both of the questions. So your answer will be assessed as follows. So here we are given what the structure of the AC. So the structure of the AC, the first thing we have to remember that we have to have what? Introduction, which is going to a new 2 marks. So it said a good starting point would be to define the concept or keyword that appears in the question. So you are to define what a concept or keyword that appears in the question. Include other sentences to support the topic. Do not include in your introduction any part of the question. Do not repeat any part of the introduction in the body. Avoid saying in the introduction what you're going to discuss in the body. So that is that. So now we are coming to the main part, which is body. So in the body, the main part, we are to discuss in detail, in depth, discussion, examine, critically discuss, analyze, compare, evaluate, distinguish, explain, assess, and debate. So you are going to as well expected to give what additional part on your essay, where you are to give own opinion, critical discuss, evaluate, critically evaluate. You can as well draw a graph, explain or use the graph given and explain and complete given graph. Calculate or deduce or compare or explain, distinguish, interpret, brief, and debate. Also, we are to conclude, give what? The conclusion. So in your conclusion, this is whereby we are going to do what? A brief summary of what has been discussed, analyze without repeating facts already mentioned in the body. Any opinion or value judgment on the facts discussed. Additional support information to strengthen the discussion or analysis. A contradictory viewpoint with motivation, if so required, as well as we can do what? Recommendations. So now let us quickly go to our question 5, macroeconomics. So you are going to get 40 marks on this question and you have to spend only 40 minutes on this question. So we are given the aspects that we are going to discuss as the first one says compare and contrast the South African mixed economy with centrally blend economic system. So we're going to compare both of those two economic system, mixed economy, as well as what? Blend, centrally blend economic system. Also, we have to evaluate the government efficiency in the delivery of social services to local communities. So that is question 5. So let's quickly go to our answers on question 5. Here we are on our answers on question 5. Remember that is macroeconomics. So you know very well that we are to compare and contrast South African mixed economy with a centrally blended economic system. Also to evaluate government's efficiency in the delivery of social services to local communities. Like when we're talking about the structure of the essay, you remember we said the A our essay must have what? The introduction. So now let us give the introduction under macroeconomics. So remember that you have said that in introduction you have to define a concept or a keyword of the question. So we now know that the keyword of the question is what? A mixed economic system as well as centrally blended economic system. So our introduction is what? A mixed economic system is an economic system that combines the advantages of both free market and centrally blended system. Since 1994, South Africa has chosen mixed economic system. So you can accept any other relevant introduction. So that is that. Now we are on mixed economy. Remember, we have to compare mixed economy as well as centrally planned economic system. So now we're going to talk about the ownership of both mixed economy as well as centrally planned economic system. So we know that under mixed economy system, this is what we are saying both private individuals, both private uh, individuals and government own resources, own sources and and businesses. That is for mixed economy. Both private individuals and government own resources and businesses. So, for example, in South Africa, private shops exist alongside government companies like Eskom as well as Transnet. So coming to the answers that are given here, it says and producers, and organizations own most of the factors of the production. The state may nevertheless own a significant proportion. That is that. So in South Africa, the state owns land capital directly through its enterprises such as Transnet, Telecom, Postal, Eskom, DNL, SABC, as well as landlords. That is why we have said both of private individuals and government owned resources and businesses. So we now know that under private consumers and producers or enterprises or organizations owns most of the factors of the production. States own a significant proportion. So that is that. So now coming to the centrally planned economic system. This is where we are saying the government, the government owns and controls, controls all factors of production, all factors of production, all factors of production. For example, in a former Soviet Union, factories and farms were government owned. That is that. So, as it says, the government owns and controls the factors of production. Labor, however, is not owned but is directed by the government. That is that. There is no private property as it has been all nationalized, expro- expropriated, also confiscated by the government. So that is that. Now we are to give what? The motivation. So we are to give motivation under mixed economy. So we know when it comes to motivation under mixed economy that private sector aims for profit. Private sector aims for profit. While public sector aims to meet social needs. Get this well. We are saying under mixed economy, private sector aims for private sector aims for profit. While public sector centrally planned economy eh, aims to meet social needs. Aims to meet social needs. That we know, for example, that a private supermarket owns profit. That is under a, a private sector. While a public hospital focuses on community health, that is under a centrally planned economy system. So that is that. So now coming to the points that we're given or the answers that we're given under mixed economy, it says in the private sector of a mixed economy, consumers and producers are assumed to be motivated by self-interest. They are motivated by self-interest. Like we've said that their aim is to make what? Profit. That is their bottom line. But in public sector, however, it is assumed to be motivated by necessity to satisfy the social needs of the community. Like we've said that their aim is to meet the social needs. So hope we get that very well. So now coming to the centrally planned, the points that you're given, the participants are assumed to be unselfish, and the motivation is to cooperate for the common good of the community. The system requires subordination and obedience and discipline on the part of the individual for the benefit of the community. That is centrally planned economic system. Meaning to say, there people work for the common good rather than personal gain. People work for common good rather than personal gain. So this one's this point that I've written here, they both fall under the economic system, not economic system, but mixed economy. So they both fall under mixed economy, where we are talking about aims, that it aims to meet social needs. So it also falls under mixed economy. Social needs. So that is under mixed economy. But under a centrally planned economic system, like we have said, the participants are assumed to be unselfish and the motivation is to cooperate for the common good of the community. Meaning to say, we are saying people work for the common good rather than personal gain. Rather personal gain rather than personal gain. For example, citizens are expected to work in the factories to help the country develop, not for personal wealth. So that. So now let us move on. Let us move on. Then now we are under planning. We are under planning. So under planning, we're still going to talk about the mixed economy as well as centrally planned economy. So planning under mixed economy, this is whereby the government helps plan and set economic goals for all sectors. This is whereby the government helps plan and set economic goals for all sectors. For example, the government set plans for job creation and infrastructure projects. So as it says now, as it says, uh, in a mixed economy, we have central planning authority. All sectors of the economy follow the economic plan of the state to achieve various targets or goals. Like I've said, that the government helps plan and set economic goals for all sectors. But when it comes to centrally planned economic system, it says the planning process is used to allocate resources. The government is the planning authority, direct producers of what to produce, direct labor into jobs, and direct consumers on what to consume. So what it means is that government, what it means is that government decides what to produce, how much, and who gets it. The government may decide how many cars should be made each year. That is that. So now let us move on to business fluctuations. So don't forget we're still talking about mixed as well as centrally planned economy. So under a business fluctuations, it says booms and slumps in the business cycle can be leveled and the government works towards creating stable economy. So what it means is that a government controls inflation and unemployment to stabilize the economy. For example, increase government spending during recession to create jobs. Hope we are still on one page, grade levels. But when it comes to centrally planned economic system, business fluctuations are controlled by the government through its control of investment and consumer expenditure. Meaning to say, the government prevents ups and downs by controlling production and spending. For example, setting fixed product targets to avoid shortages. That is that. So now let us come to competition. Not forgetting that we are talking about the mixed economy and centrally planned economic system. So under competition, it says there is high level of competition. There is high level of competition which drives business to be more innovative and improve their products and services to stay ahead of their competitors. Meaning to have what? Competitive advantage. Because there is what? High level of competition. So if there is a high level of competition, it means this drives business to try to innovate their products, try to improve their products so that they can be able to differentiate their businesses, their enterprises from their rivals, their competitors. So that means that competition is encouraged, improving quality and innovation. We can make an example with cell phone that cell phone companies like Vodacom and MTN compete for customers. So if they compete for customers, this drives them to be more innovative and improve what? Their products. Coming to centrally planned economic system, competition among producers is discouraged. Here, the competition among the producers is discouraged. Meaning to say, competition is discouraged because of state owns most business, because state owns most of business. If the only one state bakery may exist, no competition or variety. So that is that. Now let's come to full employment. Full employment. Mixed and central. So under full employment, it says full employment in a mixed economy is theoretical concept where all available resources are being utilized and everyone is willing and able to work is employed. That is under mixed economy. So in a mixed economy, the government plays an important role regulating the economy, addressing market failures which help to achieve full employment. We need to say full employment under mixed economy is that government helps regulate and create jobs. For example, public works programs that hire people to build the roads. But coming to central, full employment is achieved by directing the labor force to the economic activities. Even if the labor force achievements are not fully productive, all workers use their labor are employed, even if they may be unprofitable, because they may be better suited different productive activities. Meaning to say, in short, under centrally planned economic system, where we are talking about the full employment, is that everyone is given a job. Even if it's not productive, everyone is given a job. That is that. Now let us go to distribution of income. Let us go to distribution of income. Whether we're talking about mixed as well as central. Distribution of income, mixed economy. The government of a country with mixed economy can introduce corrective measures to ensure more equitable distribution of wealth. So, under mixed economy, government uses tax and social grants to reduce income inequality. That is that. For example, child support or old age grants. But coming to central, the distribution of economy is more even and equitable for all. So it means that income is distributed more equally by the government. For example, all workers earn similar wages regardless of their role. That is how easy we can explain. Then come to mass production now. Mass production. Mass production. So in a mixed economy, the government plays a role in regulating and guiding the economy, while also allowing private enterprise and market forces to drive innovation growth, leading to mass production. Meaning to say, both government and private companies produce on large scale under mass production in the mixed economy. For example, private car factories and government food programs. But coming to centrally, mass production is achieved through directing different producers to produce only one product each. These results are economics of scale, meaning to say the government directs producers to make large quantities for one good. So that is that, for example, produce one standard model of car for all citizens who we are together with people. Let us move on. We are under choices. We are now under choices. Whether we're talking about the mixed economy and then as well as centrally planned economy. So a mixed economy provides a wide range of products and services from both public as well as private private sectors, giving consumers a freedom to choose what suits their needs and preferences. So businesses have freedom to start new ventures, innovate and produce goods and services to meet market demands. That is under mixed economy. Meaning to say consumers have many choices from private as well as public goods. E.g., people can choose between private hospitals and public clinics. Hope you understand it. But coming to centrally planned economic system under choices, consumers have relatively little choice. Here they have little choice, limited choice. Workers may be allocated jobs in a particular occupations and geographical areas. There is no mechanisms by the enterprise to compete to provide different types of same good. Queuing is the rule. What is available for purchase in shops is most instances of poor quality. That is under centrally planned economic system. In short, what we are trying to say is that consumers have limited choices as the state decide what is made. So only one type of bread or clothing available in stores. That is that. That is an example that you can give. Now let us quickly go to economic growth. Economic growth, as we are saying, it's mixed and centrally planned economic system. Centrally planned economic system. Yeah, and centrally planned economic system. So we are under the economic growth. Oh, the economic growth, it says, under mixed economic system, the government uses efficient monetary and fiscal policy to ensure maximum economic growth and continuous stability in prices. What it says or what it means is that the government supports growth using fiscal and monetary policies. For example, lowering taxes to encourage what? Investment. That is that. Coming to central, it says economic growth is often compromised in central planned economic due to inefficient allocation of resources. Inefficient allocation of resources. As economies grow, they become more complex, and the more complex the economy is, the more difficult it is to plan the allocation of resources efficiently. So in short, it that under centrally planned economy, growth is often slower because resources are not used efficiently. E.g., factories overproducing unwanted goods. Hope it makes sense to you, people. So now let us go to economic decisions. Let us come to economic decisions. We have mixed as well as central planned economic system. It says economic decisions are made by both government and private sectors. So it's a meaning to say both government and private sectors make decisions. That's what it says. Private companies set prices, government decide tax rates. That is that. But coming to centrally, economic decisions are made by central authority. So all decisions are made by government planners. Meaning to say government can decide how many shoes or cars to produce. That is that. Now let us come to markets and prices. Markets and prices are influenced by both government and private sectors. So that is under mixed, that is under mixed economy, central. So under mixed economy, markets and prices are influenced by both government and private sectors. So prices are set by demand and supply, but can be influenced by government. Because government can set a minimum wage or fuel price limit, that is where it interferes. But coming to centrally planned economic system, markets and prices are controlled and regulated by the government. So here the prices are fixed by government, not by market. Example, the government sets a fixed price of rate for everyone who we are. Okay. Let's move on quickly. Now let us come to the additional part of our essay. Additional part. Yes, you remember that under additional part, we were to evaluate the government's efficiency in delivering social services to local government. Also, that is that. So the government service delivery to local government is efficient because now we're going to talk about the positive and negative side of it. Let us start by the positive side of it, the advantage. It says South Africa has comprehensive social welfare policy framework, including National Development Plan and Social Development Sector Plan. So what it means is that the government has a clear laws and plans to support the poor and vulnerable. For example, policies to guide how grants and social services are given to those in need. That is that. Also, it further on says social services such as grants, healthcare, education are widely available, covering significant portion of the population. Meaning to say, people can access government help in many areas of the country. For example, free healthcare in public clinics, child support grants, no fee schools. That is that. Then government has demonstrated a commitment to social protection with focus on vulnerable groups, including children, people with disability, and elderly. So it means that the government ensures citizens are protected from poverty, hardship. That is that. For example, offering unemployment insurance as well as old age pensions. Oh, we are together. It also says the state tries to uplift previously disadvantaged communities by providing social services such as housing, education, medical service, basic services like water and electricity to the poor. To the poor. So here we are saying the government supports communities that suffered under inequality and poverty. Because we have said it is uplifting previously disadvantaged people. We can make an example of the RDP houses, where the government is building RDP houses, providing free basic services like water and electricity. An increase in education and training to increase literacy and improve adult literacy, e.g. building schools, colleges, university, as well as technicals. So this is where the government tries to invest in education to help people gain skills and find jobs. That is that. Now let us move on. Health care now includes free healthcare services for all, which include NHI, that is National Health Insurance Bill, recently signed by the President. The National Health Insurance Program is essential step towards ensuring that all citizens have access to quality health. So everyone is going to access what? Quality health, regardless of what their income or their social status. That is that. Transfer of payments as social security benefits, welfare payments, and tax credits are indeed effective ways for government to redistribute wealth and provide support to citizens in need. And the transfer of payments are made in order to marginalized to be able to afford their basic needs and wants. Now we come to the negatives. Now we come to the negatives. It is the government's efficiency in social delivery to local government communities has been hampered by bureaucratic red tape, corruption, inadequate infrastructure that hid effective service delivery. Meaning to say too much paperwork, misuse of funds, and poor routes or facilities slow down the government services. Corruption in tender process delays housing and water project. That's the example that you give me. Limited financial resources, inadequate human resources, and insufficient infrastructure, which impede service delivery. So that is where we are saying now, the government now lacks enough money, skilled workers, and proper facilities to meet people's needs. For example, shortage of nurses and or teachers affects hospitals and schools in poor areas. Also, it talks about significant disparities that exist in the service delivery between urban and rural areas, with rural areas often receiving inadequate services. So we're talking about significant disparities between urban areas as well as rural areas. It simply says cities get better service than villages, causing inequality. That is that. Rural areas may have poor roads and limited access to clean water or clinics. Now, again, the state is falling short of its targets with regards to the state pensions, disability grants, and etc., due to inefficient administrative process or bureau- bureaucracy and insufficient funding of budget allocations. What it means there is that not everyone who qualifies for social grants receive them on time or at all. That is that. Now moving further, the state is currently facing the reality of too many claimants and too few taxpayers, which puts a financial strain on the government and increases tax burden of existing taxpayers. So we're talking about too many claimants and too few taxpayers. Meaning to say there are more people depending on government support than those paying taxes. Meaning to say fewer employed citizens must fund social grants for millions of unemployed people. So let us move on. Let us move on to other points. So now SA has a lower levels of literacy in rural areas. This causes lower employment levels in these areas. Hence, South Africa must improve literacy levels. So that is that. That the SA or South Africa has a lower levels of literacy in rural areas. So we're talking about lower literacy in rural areas. It means many people in rural areas cannot read or write well, making it hard to find jobs and increasing unemployment. Total expenditure on health has decreased from 65.4 billion in 2021 to 2022 to 62 billion in 2024 and 2025. So here we are talking about decrease in health expenditure. So the government spending the government is spending less money on healthcare, which can lead to poorer medical services and shortages in hospitals. That's what it means. The issue of social protection, that is, we are talking about social welfare grant, is becoming unstable as tax base is not sufficient to keep up with the increasing demand for grants. So we're talking about unstable social protection. So support systems like grants, welfare are becoming unreliable, affecting vulnerable groups who depend on them. Some rural communities are still lacking running water, basic sanitation infrastructure. Here we are talking about lack of basic services in rural areas. Some communities still don't have clean water, wireless, proper roads, showing inequality in development. There are hospitals that have a problem with water supply, and this is an indication of poor service delivery to the public. Here we're talking about hospital with water problems. When hospital lack water, hygiene and patient care suffer, showing weak service delivery. There are excellent doctors in SA, but due to poor working conditions, they live they live for US, Canada, or UK. So here we're talking about doctors leaving country. Still doctors migrate to countries like USA, UK for better pay or working conditions, leading to a shortage of medical professionals in South Africa. Hope we are still together. Hope we are still on one page, great lovers. Now let us conclude our essay. Let us conclude our essay on question 5. A mixed economy requires careful management to avoid potential drawbacks, as well as a well-implemented mixed economic system that can provide stable and prosperous economic development, balancing individual freedom with social responsibility. So we can accept any other relevant conclusion of higher order. So that is all about what? Question 5. Now we are to go to question 6. So question 5, your 2 and 40 mark. So now let us go to question 6. So here we are on our question 6. Here is our question 6. Economic pursuits. Discussing detailed characteristics of developing countries and how can a human and natural resources be used to ensure economic development. So that is that. So let's quickly go to our answers and give explanation. So here we are on question 6. Question 6, economic pursuits. Discussing detailed characteristics of developing countries and how human and natural resources can be used to ensure economic development. So, like what we did on question 5, we are still going to start with what? Introduction. This is what we told about the structure of an essay, that the introduction must be there. So, you remember that in the introduction, you have to define a concept or a keyword of the question. So here we're talking about developing countries. That is why you're going to say a developing country is a sovereign state which sovereign state with a less development industrial balance and lower human development index relative to other countries. So we can accept any other relevant introduction. So now we're going to talk about the low standard of living. The low standard of living. So when you're talking about the low standard of living, you're talking about that. This is where people have limited access to basic needs. This is where people have limited access to basic needs like food, clean water, and education. For example, we can talk about many families may live in a poor housing, struggle to afford the health care. So coming to these points that are given under low standard of living, it says in the developing countries, there is a high level of poverty with poor standard of living, with no housing, domestic services such as electricity, water, sanitation, and removal of garbage. Removal of garbage. That's what we have said, where we're saying people have limited access to basic needs like food, clean water, and education. So income per capita in developing countries is about fifth of the developed countries. This means that people people are unable to buy property, services, motor, and motor vehicles. So there is generally wide gap between rich and poor. So with large percentage of the population living below poverty, so people in developing countries have a life expectancy of 52 years or less, whereas those in developed countries live for 75 to 80 years of average. So that is the low standard of living. So that has moved to low levels of activity, low levels of productivity. So here, what it simply says, workers produce less. We're saying produce, workers produce, workers produce less output because of limited skills. Because of limited skills, poor equipment, and low technology. And poor technology. So that is that. So, for example, farmers using hand tools instead of modern machinery to produce less. So workers are going to produce less because of limited skills. They are not fully equipped with skills and knowledge. So that is going to make them to produce less. They are going to be under production. They are going to produce less. And the reason can as well be the poor equipment now and low technology. So now coming to the points that are given under low levels of productivity. It says, in addition to a low standard of living, developing countries are characterized by relatively low levels of labor productivity. The main cause are low education standards. Like we've said, limited skills that we've talked about is because of low education standards. We feel the countries, a lack of investment in a physical capital such as machinery, a lack of experienced management and lack of process to technology. So we have talked about this. Like I've said, us having poor equipment can as well affect our production. Also the skills. If the skills lacks, it means we are going to be with workers that are going to produce less because of they are inexperienced as well. In addition to these factors, a lack of good public health services as well as inadequate drinking water, sanitation, waste disposal, all result in high incidence of waterborne and other environmental diseases, resulting in poor levels of health among workers. That is that. So let us move on. Also, now we come to population of dependency patterns. High population crop dependency patterns. So here we are saying the population grows faster. The population grows faster than than available resources, increasing pressure on jobs, increasing pressure on jobs, schools, and healthcare. And healthcare. For example, many children and elderly depend on small working population for support. So you see, so it says developing countries usually have high population growth rate due to very high birth rates. See, the population grows faster. So birth rates in developing countries are generally in the order of 30 to 40 per 1,000, whereas those developed countries are less than half of that figure. So in the developing countries, the population grows faster than to those in the developed countries. So the group birth rate is one of the most efficient ways of distinguishing the less developed from the more developed. That is that. The birth rate is the one that distinguishes less to more developed countries. So a high population growth rate causes a number of problems, such as unemployment. So people, we're going to a population that is more, but now you find that the jobs are very little. So pressure is going to be on housing, pressure is going to be on education, as well as health services. So furthermore, the labor force in developing countries has to support almost twice as many children and elderly people as it does in richer countries. So children as well as older people are often referred to as economic dependency burden because they are non-productive members of society. So they are not working. So that is what we are saying. They refer to as economic dependency burden. They are not burden because they are not burden because they are non-productive members as they are not working. So they must be supported financially by countries' labor force. So you see. So the dependence burden represents about one third of the population of developed countries, but almost 45% of the population of the less developed nations. So that is high population growth and dependency burdens. So let us move on to high levels of unemployment. High levels of unemployment. So here we are saying there are not enough jobs. There are not enough jobs for all people, for all people who are willing, who are who are willing, for all people who are going to work, but they cannot find job. So many young people finish school but cannot find employment. That is that. So it says low levels of education and training and entrepreneurial knowledge are to high rates of unemployment. That is that. So labor is also underutilized in developing countries as compared to developed countries. So in order to accommodate the rapid population growth, it is necessary to create many jobs and an aim that is usually not achieved. So there are not enough jobs for all people who are willing to work. That is that. So that's why we say low levels of education in training and entrepreneurial knowledge to make people to become their own boss to do great job or establish their own businesses. It's a problem because they don't have those entrepreneurial skills. So that as well lead to high unemployment. So now let us move on to dependency on primary sector. Dependency on primary sector. So with dependency on primary sector, it means that the economy relies heavily on farming. relies on heavily, heavily on mm, fishing or mining instead of instead of manufacturing or services. So that the economy relies on heavily on farming, fishing, or mining instead of manufacturing or service. That is always a dependency on the primary sector. So it says economies of developing countries are mainly dependent on agriculture or other primary sector activities like fishing, example, is our example, for example. So a high proportion of people are employed in the primary sector with little employment opportunity outside this sector. You see, they are in the mining, they are in the farms, fishing, so that. So the late as 1960, exports of primary sector produce accounted more than 84% of all exports of developing countries. So in part of Africa, land is a communal property and little use is made of modern agricultural techniques and technology. So agricultural production results in small surpluses for sale. Although agricultural production in Africa is declining, exports of agricultural products continue to dominate African economies, and agriculture accounts for more than 70% of employment. So that's that. So let us move on. So let us move on to um, the efficiency of agriculture, efficiency of infrastructure, efficiency of infrastructure, efficiency of infrastructure. So here, under the efficiency of infrastructure, we're talking about that there is a lack of good roads. There is a lack of good roads, of good roads, good roads, electricity, electricity, water, water supply, and communication system. Communication system. For example, poor roads make it hard to transport goods to markets. So it says a major problem in most developing countries is that infrastructure, such as roads, power generation, facilities, and community systems are often leaky and poorly maintained. So this lack of infrastructure results in poor access to money. So our markets are not going to be accessed. So that is going to affect the markets negatively because they cannot be accessed due to poor infrastructure, like we talked about the road. This restructuring efforts has helped reduce public debt, promote black economic empowerment, and advance uh, competition. That is that. So now let's just quickly come to the additional part. As we said that now we are coming to how can human and natural resources be used to ensure uh, economic uh, development? That is that. So we are saying natural resources are extracted through primary sector activities, which creates employment and income opportunities for unskilled and semi-skilled workers. So those people who find themselves with unnecessary skills when it comes to primary sector activities. This is where they get the opportunities, those unskilled and skilled workers. So that is that. Production relies on natural resources, creating export opportunities that create employment opportunities, which increase the living standard. So that is how human natural resources can be used to ensure economic development. So production relies on natural resources. Natural resources. So this can allow the export opportunities. South Africa receives a lot of income from tourism industry due to availability of natural resources. So that aside, aside for tourist attractions, improving the living standards of individuals employed in the tourism industry. So that is as well how human and natural resources can be used to ensure economic development. We have natural resources here whereby other people can come to South Africa and admire the attraction that South Africa is. So people who are working there in the tourism industry, that as well will help them. That is as well going to improve their living standard. Investing in education and training program enhance skills and knowledge, increasing productivity and competitiveness, encouraging efficient use of natural resources, reducing waste and promoting sustainable consumption patterns, ensuring access to quality health care that promotes productivity in the workplace. That is that. And now we come to conclude now. Conclusion. Developing countries face significant challenges in achieving economic growth and development. And addressing these challenges requires comprehensive approach that includes diversifying economics and promoting industrialization. So accept any underlying conclusion of higher order. So this is the end of our presentation for our AC for grade 11, section C. This is a very important part. Make sure that you are not going to get the AC wrong when you write your examination. So for you not to get it wrong, make sure that you're going to go through this AC and then enjoy yourself with it because it will help you a lot. It will prepare you for your exams that you're going to write. Thank you very much for your time and make sure that you're going to share with your concern and make sure that you don't forget to hit the subscription button. Thank you very much, great levels.